And welcome once again to another night of the political consciousness of West Coast Steel Fan. I'm expecting some of my colleagues soon. I did. Sometimes these links don't go out, so I had to resend them. Okay. All right. In the meantime, my topics for discussion tonight, of course, open up with Roe v. Wade and the Supreme Court striking down a law that has been in effect for over 50 years, almost my whole lifetime. Now, in reversing this, Uncle Thomas also insinuated that this is also the law that is the foundation for same sex marriage. And if you look a little deeper into that, he didn't say anything about interracial marriage, which is also built on that same foundation. I wonder why that was, but I guess that's an item that's up for debate. But when you look at the record of Uncle Thomas, I think we know his record as far as homophobia, as far as the LGBT community. And it seems to me that the one of the foundations of this country, the separation of church and state, no one seems to feel that that line has been crossed. And even though most of these so-called pro-lifers seem to have a lot excuse me, these pro-lifers seem to have a lot to say about what happens in the womb. And there was a very interesting fact that I ran across that said that embryos can be frozen. We have had women get pregnant from embryos that have been frozen, in some case for decades. But there's never a case of a baby being froze and brought back to life later. So, does that argument carry water? That life starts, not that life starts, but that life before the development of a actual human form. In other words, it's just like any other egg. When you produce sperm, you have an embryo. Now, I'm not, where is everyone? Um, let's see. Okay, let's see. All right. Anyway, as I was saying, it seems to me that there is a lot of controversy about when life begins and when life is viable. Now, I don't know. I'm not a woman. I cannot speak on a lot of these things as an authoritarian. I don't know when a woman's body starts changing and she starts realizing that she's pregnant, but from having sisters. Oh, okay. Bring that pot of beans on with you. Uh, we were just talking about. Okay. All right. Well, all right. So that lets me know that everybody got the link. All right. So, getting back to my first observation here with Judge Clarence. Now, these other ideas, contraception and same-sex marriage, that Clarence Thomas has said that should also be challenged. Once again, I think goes to dissension. If a judge knows, or if you know that a judge has a particular point of view, and you're thinking about an upcoming decision, then perhaps that judge should not rule on that. That is the reason why we have an odd number of judges, for one thing, but for another, judges, as I said, are supposed to be apolitical. So if you're touting a certain verdict or touting a certain uh, religion or creed, I don't think that you should be allowed to rule on that. Judicial prejudice is a real thing. And my second question is, why are the Democrats so afraid to use the lead of the Republicans in the previous administration? Coney Barrett, Kavanaugh, and who was all three of these judges. The Trump administration not only told you beforehand that they were going to pack the court with conservative judges, not only did they tell you that after packing the court with these conservative judges, they were going to overturn Roe v. Wade. Did you not believe them? What was it? This wasn't something that they kept under wraps. What was it that made you think that the right was not going to implement these laws? And and did you listen to the candidate on, was it Saturday? The day after this, when she said this is a great victory for white, and then, since it's been changed to the right. But it's kind of like a drunk saying what's really on their mind, and oops, slips, like they said, once the cat is out of the bag, it's kind of hard to retract things like this. So, um, when the life, and I look at all these protests on TV now, by sheer numbers, or at least by coverage, I cannot really tell how much. No, I'm going to. Well, I'll put it like this: as far as the coverage of the protests are concerned, it seems to be about 50-50 on both sides. Now, whether or not this is true in the actual division of uh, pro-life versus uh, pro Roe v. Wade, although it seems to be decided, the protests seem to be going 50-50. I have to wonder how much more does this further help divide our nation? Because at at one time, or many times, we have cut our decisions based on race. This is one time I'm not really sure because Caucasian people, white people, get divorces, get abortions also. And just by sheer numbers, they are the majority of young women seeking Planned Parenthood and contraception and these methods of birth control as well as uh, are more susceptible, well, just as susceptible to rape and incest as minority neighborhoods. And I think this can be the deciding factor. Excuse me. And by being the deciding factor, I'm saying now you've also isolated Caucasian women, Latino women, Asian women, women from all different walks of life. Now, we can have freedom of religion, but because your religion doesn't want to give us freedom of choice, we have to abide by your particular rules, which I don't think is particularly fair. But as I've said many times, a fair is a place where livestock is judged. I see Dr. Casey is here, and usually Dr. Casey brings a certain amount of energy that a lot of other people will just join in. I don't know. It must be that smile. Maybe that's it. Yeah.
Listen, my views on some of these topics are not probably what people think that they should be.
Well,
As a woman,
I didn't bring you in because of I wanted you to express other people's opinion. I mean, but that's up to you, But
s-
so I do uh, think that you do present a different side than a lot of us probably project. So the fact that you would have a different perspective is kind of uh, a reliable source.
objective.
Yeah, you know. But there are a few things that I think that we have missed even with these decisions. But let's start with the Friday decision, Roe v. Wade. And my question was, my first question was, how much of an impact do you think this will have on the midterms and the upcoming 2024 elections?
So I think that things are about to get interesting across the board because people are being forced to reconcile within themselves right now, what they are going to do moving forward. Before, I think a lot of people were comfortable. And as things continue to seemingly be in an uproar, I think that it makes people um, look at the election process and politics a little bit different and deeper. Now, in particular, with the Roe v. Wade, I am not pro abortion. I am I think I weigh more on the pro-choice side, but I don't believe the overturning of this um particular um thing is taking away women's rights, because there are certain aspects of the Constitution that the Supreme Court are supposed to uphold. And then there are some things that kind of overstep the bounds of what the Supreme Court is supposed to do and what people are supposed to do on a state level. So a lot of what we see as a outrage and uproar is, um, in my opinion, because the Supreme Court is taking the federal government out of the middleman seat when it comes to what states do on this particular topic. So I think that it, I don't think that everybody should be forced to have a baby if they don't want a baby. I definitely think that um, you should be forced to be accountable, though. I think that you should be forced to um, be more mindful because, I think if I'm not mistaken, only 0.5% of 0.5%, I think it's less than 1% of people are actually having abortions because of rape, and being forced to have babies. So that means that um, that small percentage that people are fighting for is it exists, but it's not as big as people are making the outrage about. And then I think about knowing people who have had multiple abortions just because that is their choice of birth control. I know a lot of men who has paid for multiple abortions just because that is their birth control. So now if a man can't just pay for an abortion and a woman can't just be like, "Well, I can sleep with anybody and I can just have an abortion as my primary means of birth control," that means that a lot of people have to think a little bit more about who they're going to be intimate with. They have to think a little bit more. For me, as a woman, I am very cautious when I go out, when I meet people, when I do certain things. So I'm always, maybe because I'm a veteran, guarding my perimeter, watching my perimeter. So I'm not saying that rape is avoidable. Sometimes there is no way to protect yourself against rape. There is no way to protect yourself against, especially in family incest and things like that. So I think that there should be exceptions to the rule in that nature, and medical, because there are a lot of medical reasons to get an abortion, ectopic pregnancy, and a lot of other things that can go on in the midst of being pregnant that makes a woman get an abortion. So I think that there should be medical exceptions, which normally there are medical and religious exceptions for every rule. And then there should be um it shouldn't be banned in just every place, but every state the way the government works is the federal government oversees everybody, and then every state is their own. It's like having many countries inside of a big country. The continent with little small countries, that's the way that the structure of American states were built. They just, every time they took another territory, it came another, got zoned into states. So I think that states, local elections will be more intense because states are in control of what women are doing with their bodies. So I think that it will be interesting to see how this plays out in the midst of the stock market and everything that's going on there. It's a lot of things simultaneously happening right now on a large scale. Some of it is a distraction, and some of it is spiritual warfare, and then some of it is just what the hell is going on, and it has to be addressed. But it's a lot of things, like I say, with everything else. In order for you to really um, see what's going on, sometimes you have to shake the ground. Sometimes you have to unsettle things in order to get things where they need to be. So I am very intrigued to see how, between the January 6th insurrection to the Roe v. Wade to, it's a lot of things. The economy right now, the inflation, some of the things seem to be being purposely done to push things in a certain direction. So overall, I think that this is going to be where the rubber meets the road, where people have to get accountable not only in their sexual bodies, but in their political stance and what they do moving forward.
Now, I understand what you're saying, and believe me, as far as I'm looking at it from a male perspective, I probably have a different view than most men, simply behind the fact that I'm older, and the fact that I've, in some cases, been through some similar situations. But the thing that surprises me is that there are no consequences for men. And no one objects to that. I mean, it's okay. So if a woman gets pregnant and comes over here to California and gets an abortion, she's from Alabama, she can be charged. Well, and the latest case I think was manslaughter. So if the woman can be charged with manslaughter for having an abortion, shouldn't the man have some responsibility?
If the man is paying for the abortion, I'm sure this is the things that we got to see play out, because if the man is paying for the abortion or pressuring the woman to get an abortion, because sometimes women don't want abortion.
Oh
Sometimes that
yeah,
man is the
I've been
person.
there.
So, with that being the situation, that's where it's going to be interesting to see how things play out, because more men are likely to get caught up than women. Um, Men kind of got it easy, because they can kind of do what they want to. But I think about the men, because there are men that don't know that their significant other or baby mama or side chick or one off is pregnant. And if you don't know, and then that woman goes and aborts that child, then I think that there are a lot of instances where women go get abortions and sneak and get abortions, and men are left unknowing. So I when
No,
you look
because
at
we
it
don't
that
keep
way.
up with that. We don't keep up with that thing.
Right, right, but my point was, you look at it like, well, will men get in trouble? We'll have to wait and see on that. But I'm also, you know, I have a soft place in my heart for men,
Of course.
especially.
Thank you. Thank you. No,
I really do, because I understand that women can not all women are difficult. Not all women are overbearing. Some of the ones that are not necessarily black. Um, not
but
all women
but
have
but Dr.
attitude or
Casey,
chip
I,
on their
I do
shoulder.
have 7 sisters, and all of them do happen to be black. I mean, I'm just
I mean,
saying.
no, no, listen, with the amount of things that we go through in life, the amount of struggle with whether it's hair, weight, sexuality for some, whether it is feeling when you're pretty, you get approached and you get assaulted probably more than what people realize. People think that pretty girls got it easy. But I've been put now. You may not think I'm pretty, but I think I'm pretty. I've been punched in the face before. I've been assaulted sexually. I've endured a lot of things just because people felt like they should have the privilege or the entitlement to me. So it this is interesting. I actually was speaking to my son the other day after it happened, and I was like, "Look, son, stop, don't start. Look, you ain't having sex yet, but when you start, don't be just sticking your thing in anything, because people think, well, if she get pregnant, well, she just go get an abortion, and it's not going to be that easy no more. So I think people will really begin to think, probably not, about who and how quick they're getting in bed with people, and just because look at how many. Now listen, we know Planned Parenthood was not started for the good graces of people. Abortion was not started in the good graces of black people necessarily. A lot of these things that we are fighting for was done in order to keep us in bondage, with less numbers in the population, but now it is kind of some things that they did a long time ago still play in its favor. it's a lot of things that they did a long time ago that backfires, and it's a lot of things now that we're going to see again play out and backfire in their face, like white privilege is kind of backfiring a little bit because it doesn't work in their favor as greatly as it used to. So a lot of things we have to just kind of allow things to play out. In order to see change, it has to come through chaos to some extent. It's just like I always say this, when you go to a new company, if you get new management, they normally fire all the people. They normally clear out everybody, start all over again because old people bring in old ideals to a new environment. So, I am intrigued with everything, but it's kind of crazy and shocking to see how many people are fighting to kill babies. I've never like I don't understand it. I think that I mean, in Georgia, I just was looking it up. Georgia, they have where you can get a abortion at 20 weeks. That damn baby is goddamn a baby. That's the whole goddamn. You can see the the gender of the child. So and of course, some people explain that in that it's because if something is wrong with your baby, like if you know, but I don't know. I don't I've never believed in abortion. I know people that had 10, 15 abortions, one person. I know guys that had them pay for 10, 15, 20 abortions. I've never been a fan of it. I wouldn't want to put my beliefs on anyone, but I believe that there is a certain level of accountability and responsibility when you can't just go and have an abortion.
But also, okay, now, as I said, once again, coming from a male perspective here, because I was in my 20s when Roe v. Wade was first
Right,
adapted, so I kind of remember the back alley things, and you had to go see Miss So and So to find
right,
out, the lady and all this,
right.
but once again, I have the only problem that I have, whether it's pro-abortion, pro-life, whatever you want to call it, is that I think that a woman should have a right to choose whatever she wants. I don't think that men should be telling women what to do with their bodies. Now, maybe if it had been six women against 6'3", the other way,
See, this when when you say men telling women what to do with their bodies, I don't believe that that is what that is happening. You can sleep with whoever the you want to. You can
right,
go and
right.
do whatever you want to, but the consequences of your actions have to be accounted for. So, you can go and do that, but you need to be more cautious when you do it. STDs and AIDS did not stop people from damn sleeping around.
Oh, no, no, no. But
Herpes has not stopped people from sleeping around.
no, none.
Shit, there has been nothing that has stopped people or been a measure of, you know what, maybe I should be more careful. Hopefully, this is one of those things. Like, I have again, I have a very complex view. I'm not saying that a woman shouldn't be able to do whatever she wants. You can, but once you do whatever you want, what's the consequences for your actions when you do whatever you want? It's almost like if a woman hits a man and that man hit her back, I'm not saying that a man should hit a woman back or hit a woman, but if a woman sucker punch you, then guess what you might do as a natural reaction? You might not be
Yeah,
trying to hit her back, but your reflexes pop out. It might pop out. You know what I'm
yeah,
saying?
yeah,
That does
yeah,
not
yeah.
make it okay. I am not saying that it is okay. But if a woman is beating you up, at some point, you are going to hit her back. It is a reaction. So if that woman doesn't want to be beat up, then she shouldn't be beating on men. Am I saying that a man should beat up a woman? Because if she is beating him up regularly, then at some point you're going to want to defend yourself.
Spousal abuse goes both ways. That's
No,
just
no, no, and I apologize because it do because I know women that's abusive as well that beat up on men I mean, but I know it's like you said, it goes both ways. Women beat up men all the time, and then the one time that man hit her, but pop her back, then it's a problem. And the same way when men beat up women, the one time she cut them or do something crazy, then it's a problem. So we as a nation have a problem with accountability. We do things, we're not thinking things out, we're not weighing our options. There's no problem solving, no reasoning. Everybody always talking about wise math in school, so you can learn how to damn reason, so you can learn how to solve complicated issues, not always in your mind but with your mind. Like, that is the purpose of it. It's not really, I mean, the numbers are important, but it's more about learning how to break down problems, solve problems, and make it make sense so that you can get to the solution.
Well, on the same vein, wouldn't it be appropriate to have programs such as Planned Parenthood so that you can have those alternatives, just like you learn those alternatives in
Did,
school? That
had you
you don't
ever
close down the schools because kids don't learn.
have you ever heard the or read the founder of Planned Parenthood quote when they was making it? It was some real
Oh,
racist ass
they,
shit
yeah,
that they was like, well, we gonna stop these black people from having these tens and 15 babies, because black people was procreating like a muck before
right.
they started letting abortions happen. Uh, Everybody grandmas had
Well,
10, 12 kids. So when you think about the reason, the real reason behind this, like, everybody is posting that little white lady that is pro-black, and she really be making people understand the difference between racism and how it's wrong. I can't think of her name. I think it's Jane Elliott. Everybody is posting her talking about the Planned Parenthood, but they don't realize that Planned Parenthood was bad for us. It was not
yes,
like
yes. Well,
it was horrible. So when you think about that, I had a miscarriage because of Planned Parenthood. They told me I wasn't pregnant when I was pregnant, and I ended up having a miscarriage week later because they put me on birth control. So Planned Parenthood, they can kiss my ass. Yeah.
well, but hey, it's now Uncle Thomas, and maybe you're a fan of Mr. Thomas. I don't really
No,
know, but
no.
has said that the
Real
basis
live Uncle Tom.
the basis for these laws, the foundation upon their which they're written, also uh, means shows that the principles for contraception and same-sex marriage should also be challenged.
Now they're going to challenge stuff, but I don't agree with that. I think that same sex marriage should be legal. I think that having more than one wife and being polygamous should be legal. Because if you're saying they're trying to control women's
You
bodies and
talking about
women's
the
choice,
'70s all over again, yeah,
I
but
mean,
it's
no, but if you say, like, listen, the context that we have out here is that the government is trying to control women's choice and what they do, but they control who we marry, when we marry, how many people we marry. What the fuck do they not control already? Like, let's be honest. What don't they control? They can tell us who we can marry. They can tell us how close we can be. They can the shit. You can get sued for goddamn going sleeping with somebody else's husband if you live in the wrong state. So I mean, like, there is a whole bunch of stuff that they do control, whether or not it's enforced, whether or not we realize it. All of these things are subjective. Everything that we're talking about when it comes to laws, enforcement of laws, and politics is subjective.
well, in 40, was it 42 states, sodomy is illegal, but I'm just saying, you know,
Listen,
uh,
um,
but
our
but
sexual being, but if you think about it, even if you think about how religion controls how we see sex as a whole, that in itself is controlling. A lot of the things that we are seeing and a lot of the things that people are upset about is because they believe that religion is the reason why all of these things are happening. And in most cases, that is true. But until we can help people get out of that religious mindset and that hold, because it's a stronghold. And you talk to the right people, they say, it's the way that seems right that leads to destruction. I think that the Bible and the religion is the way that leads to destruction, because I haven't seen in 50 years, and I'm only about to be 40, in 50 years of religion being the thing, what has come from it. See, but those things play into the greater grand scheme of what we believe that we have a right to. It's just like when you think about because we are talking about abortions and sex and things like that. It's a lot of things that people don't believe that they have a right to, that they have the availability to when it comes to sex, because religion. So it is this is why it's imperative to, I don't want to say just to vote, because it got to be more than just voting. It has to be a lot of, self discovery and understanding who you are. So if you do vote, you voting for, you can't even really vote for the right thing now, because every politicians lie. Politicians tell you what you
Think
want to
so?
hear when you want to hear it. Man, I just was listening down there, and this little girl was like, they sending out campaign calls to don't to get donations now that the Roe v. Wade is overturned. Like, that should not be a political campaigning point. Why hasn't something been done more permanent? Some things should not just be left up in the air. You have to get some things done and completed, and if not, then you are leaving it open to whatever might come down the line.
Well, now, let's think about what Trump did when he was, he said part of his campaign pledge is, yes, I will pack the court with conservatives if you give me a chance. And sure enough, we gave him a chance. So uh, as far as uh, the Roe v. Wade uh, question, he's promised that he would overturn it. He promised that his judges, he would appoint judges. And right now, it seems, if we go strictly upon party lines, it's going to be mostly 6-3 decisions. Do you think that the Democrats should pack the Supreme Court like the Republicans did, or do you think that 9 is enough? Personally, I think, that if we did, it should be by 2, make it 11. But it has more to do with representation than it has to do with actual law. Because even if we had 11, I mean, it's still 6-5.
Hmm.
If you appointed 2 conservative judges, so I mean, you know, sometimes too much is too many. I wouldn't want to put 4 in there. So
One of the things that you have to realize is that it's always a one up. No matter what you do to try to fix it, somebody else can come and one up. So you can't really pad the Supreme Court. You can't. It's some things you just can't. You can't do it the way that you think that you can, and because at the end of the day, eventually, some of these older people will no longer be here, and they will have to be replaced. And it's just a matter of, it's so the politics is so crazy because we have so many old people in position. That's the crazy part. And it's nothing wrong with being older, but when you're talking about leadership and politicians, when you got somebody that's been on the same shit for 30 years, 40 years, 50 years, some of these people been in there for 60 years. And like, so until those people begin to um transition to the good place, then we're kind of, it's like it's
let's
only
just
so
say
much
to
we can
another
do.
place.
Well, have you ever seen the show The Good Place?
No, I haven't.
The show The Good Place, you should watch it. It's on Netflix. I love this show. It is like it's like heaven and hell, depending on who you are.
Okay.
Like
Okay.
that's
Wait,
the way it seems. That show is really good, and then Lucifer is a good show too if you
Yeah,
like.
of course, Lucifer would, but
I
anyway,
love that show. That show
uh,
was so good. I was so scared of first off, I know this is not on subject. I was scared to watch Lucifer at first because it's called Lucifer. I was like, I'm not, I can't do watch the devil's work. But then when I actually start watching it, it was very good. The best thing that I liked about that show is that the context and content was really based in the fact that the devil wasn't making nobody do anything. He just was sending people to things. But it goes back to what I was saying. It's not they're not taking anybody's choice away. It's just they're making you deal with the consequences of the things that you said. So if you're doing things, see, but the thing is that everybody isn't reckless. Sometimes, you can be married and not want children. But my old pastor, I used to go to a church. I only went to church for 6 years, and then I had to go. But during the time that I was there, the thing when me and my ex husband was together, we was in Phoenix, and I was pregnant with my daughter, and I was like kind of not happy to be pregnant, but they was like, if you're not protecting yourself, then you're practicing getting pregnant. You know what I'm saying? Like if you're not taking the proper procedures and pulling out is not a proper procedure because you can get pregnant on pre-cum. You know why I didn't have sex until I was older and I was scared to have sex because I had a cousin that got pregnant from pre-cum. She said he barely got the tip in and she got dang gone got pregnant. So you know what? I was scared. I ain't do it for a long time, but people need to be aware of that. If you're fertile, you got dang going just a drop, just a drop of some swimmers is gonna get you.
I thought I had a girlfriend like that. It's like, damn, babe, what the? I mean, but anyway, all I gotta do is look at your ass. I mean, what the, but
Some people are like that. Some people are like that, and it's so crazy because this is the thing. There was a time where people were like that, and they had 10 kids. They had 12 kids. It wasn't no complications like that. It was people that have 12 healthy babies. But then they started letting you get abortions. And when they started letting you get abortions, those 10 kids became two or three. And it became less and less. So the population for our black community decreased as well.
Good evening, Miss Sims. How are you doing this evening?
You gotta be muted.
I'm not muted.
It
Maybe.
might be it's her headphones. You plugged in?
No.
How about now?
Yep.
Now we can hear you.
Okay, I'm on the computer then. Okay.
All right. How are you doing tonight, Miss Sims?
I'm well. I'm well.
We were talking about this Roe v. Wade, the reversal of Roe v. Wade, and I was saying that I was a young man when it happened, and you were a much younger young lady when Roe v. Wade was passed. What do you think about this certain reversal after 50 years?
Is it a reversal or did they refer it back to the states to decide?
Well, isn't that a reversal before? I mean, because when they referred back to the states, that means that there is no more federal Roe versus Wade. So that means effectively we have no Roe v. Wade and states are deciding. Right now, in 19 states, it is illegal to have an abortion. In 7 of those states, I believe it is illegal to go to another state and have an abortion.
But that doesn't entirely mean that it excludes Roe, the finding of Roe versus Wade. But anyway, your question was what I think of it. Well, I think it's going to be going back because the reason why I mentioned going back to the state because just recently I
It, it,
read.
it, it is to the states. The
Mhm.
fact is that it is not a federal
It's not a
mandate anymore.
protection. Mhm.
It's
Yeah,
not under. So as of now, there is no federal protection. It is going back to the states, which is why it's called a defeat.
Yeah. And I brought that up because this was in the last week I saw our Attorney General making a statement that Minnesota is one of the states where it is legal to get abortion. He was assuring people of that, and plus, within the last month, I've had people coming to the door asking me questions about it. And number one, I think it gets back. It's political, and why is at this time, usually when something goes to the Supreme Court, they throw it back to the states. It's political, and it's not within their self-interest to rule on it again, so they toss it back to the states. But one of the reasons I think that it keeps, for me, in my thinking about it, it keeps rising the way it does, is because one of the major players is totally out of the picture, not even talked about it, and that's the male. For me, if it goes back to a state that holds it a crime against a woman to have an abortion, they're willing to prosecute her and go that route. Then I ask myself, okay, if they're going that route, is the male, because the male is involved in her getting pregnant, does that mean that he will be accused of being an accessory to whatever she's charged with? Because in a sense, he set her up. Both of them know, as the Casey was saying, it gets back to part of your sexual choices and your sexual activity. It gets back to that, because if he isn't held in some or even discussed, then he's kind of set her up because of him knew the consequences of having sex, especially unprotected sex. And then if you go to the side of the woman's choice, and if a woman, states still have it, it's a woman's choice, then that also involves the male. When she chooses that choice, is she naming the person who also was involved with her becoming pregnant? And in her decision to have that child, is she going to name who the father is? Is he on the birth certificate? If she chooses not 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 to have him on the birth certificate, does that mean that she is totally going to be responsible for raising that child financially on her own, or is she allowed to have it so that she can apply for what is it, public assistance or whatever, for financial aid coming to her to raise the child? In a sense, she's allowing her partner to escape any kind of consequences, thereby she's if she applies for assistance in getting it, then other people besides her partner is financially contributing to that, the rearing of that child. And here again, he gets away scot free. And if sometimes if her partner is named on the birth certificate, um, he can sometimes not even hold a job to get out of not paying financially, contributing financially to the rearing of a child. So it's, to me, it has to, somewhere along the line, the role of the male has to come into the conversation, or else it's going to keep going back and forth like it is at the political hot potato.
Okay, Miss Sims, I gotta, maybe I'm gonna school you a little bit here because you might have come from a different class of neighborhood, but in the projects we had guys called welfare pimps, which means that they had two or three women that had four or five kids, and on the first of the month they go by and take the check from the
Yeah,
woman. The kids go without. Okay, so
I'm
and
aware of that. Yes.
and number two, if you remember, well, like I said, you might have been under different circumstances, but in the late '70s and early '80s, The question was, are you on birth control? Not do you have a rubber?
Yeah, I was thinking of that as you and Dr. Casey were talking. Birth control came up before the abortion thing, didn't it? Or they came together? Yeah.
They kind of came together, but as Dr. Casey pointed out, the original reason for birth control, had nothing to do actually with what it says, birth control. It had more to do with control of the population
Yeah.
and certain segments of the population. So, and I brought up numerous times, as a matter of fact, before you came on, I brought up that same obligation for men, but when I was, back there doing my thing, it was, it wasn't about, hey, babe, make sure you take your pills tonight. I mean,
Who's thinking about that when it's time to bust something down?
right,
Nobody.
right.
Carrie Perry want to put a condom on. They're not good for you either. Women have allergic reactions to condoms in most cases. They do not agree with the pH balance and everything else. So, but the other thing that I was curious about, and I am wondering, is how this will affect parents who force their children to get abortions. Because it's a lot of parents that will force their children to get abortions if they're not in a place or position or old enough in the parents' eyes to have a child. So that is something that that comes to mind as well.
Ladies, should there be an age limit on abortion? In other words, you can't have one younger than, uh, say the age of 12, which we're talking about, where there's incest or rape
Hot
involved,
tail. Sometimes them girls be hot tail girls out there in the
oh,
street.
hey, like I said, I got 7 sisters. I can tell you the whole damn spectrum, So,
Right.
so, as I'm saying, it seems like we want to give people responsibility, but have people proved that they've
When
going
you
to
get
be
proven,
responsible?
there is a quote, Morgan Freeman and Evan Almighty, not Bruce Almighty. Evan Almighty is the season. I
Yeah, I
like
know.
both of them. So in Evan Almighty, when the woman is leaving the husband, and they are sitting in the restaurant, and Morgan Freeman, I'm trying to make sure I'm saying the right person. He sits down with her and he said, if you pray to God and ask God for patience, do you think he just give you patience, or do he give you opportunities to practice your patience? If you pray for peace, do God just give you peace, or do he give you opportunities to practice being at peace? Whatever it is that you're praying for, God is not going to just voila that thing. He's going to give you an opportunity to put the measures in which you're asking for into place. So a lot of the things that we're asking for, some of the things that we're fighting for, we don't know that we're fighting against ourselves, because we've been programmed to think it's about rights, it's about this, or it's about that. And so many times we're like fighting like hardcore, like going to war for something that doesn't even benefit us. The something that was set in place to destroy us. And it's crazy whether you're talking about welfare and food stamps and public assistance, because those things are issue too. But I think that when it comes to like age limits and things like that, if you take the federal mandate for Roe v. Wade, I think you remove it from being able to be covered up under Medicare or Medicaid. And I think that, and I could be wrong, but in my mindset, if the government is paying for your abortions, then the government is going to have some say on who gets to be able to get an abortion. If you're paying for it yourself, it should be a different case. But I think this is so complex because people are very emotionally responsive to a lot of things that happen. A lot of people don't know, don't understand. They have no research documentation of what really was taking place and how things really affect. It's just like people that fight for like the vaccines, but they're proven not to be effective. Like y'all might think that they're effective, but they're really not. So, but when you fight for things that you don't know are harmful to you, you don't even realize that you're fighting for your own demise. And or your own your own belittlement sometimes, because you fight for something and then the shit that you fighting for smack you in the face because it's not really for you like that. And I think that's one of the biggest problems that we have as a culture. It's almost like when we say, "Oh, we're gonna take a break from a day from shopping." A day from shopping is not changing anything. Like, you need to do a little bit more than one day of anything. But we ask for a lot, but we're really not accountable. We have to be proven and put in a position to be responsible, A child that is never left alone, they don't know how to be alone, because guess what? They've never been left alone. You have to leave a child alone in order to see how a child is going to operate. Just like driving. A person that has never driven, they don't want to drive alone until you got to teach them, and then you have to put them on the road. Unless you put them on the road to do that road test, guess what? They'll never know. So some shit, you got to let it, you have to go through the motions so you can know.
What do you think about that, Miss Sims?
James, before when you asked about should there be an age limit, etc., you avoided a question. I'll ask you: do you think the male has a responsibility in the this abortion question? And as people talk about it,
No,
the way to keep it political is to not explain it all, how it came to be, and to keep people emotionally involved, and to keep it a hot potato so that it's a political thing. And most people don't, I would imagine, don't realize how Roe versus Wade all came about, and how the courts got involved in it.
Well, now see, there's two different answers here. There's the 75-year-old, James, that doesn't have to worry about that. So, I can preach male responsibility all day long. Now, if you wanted to talk to the 25-year-old James, what the hell is you talking about, woman? Are you crazy? You told me you was on the pill.
Mhm. It's gonna be a lot of deflection going on.
you know, but but
But
yes.
here again, there are ways for males to be just as responsible for.
Hey, it don't feel the same. It just ain't right. Come on, Miss Sims. We didn't heard all the excuses before. I think
That's why I'm
I
saying.
might have a catalog full of them. Now. I don't know. Maybe I should put them in a book. I got so many excuses.
I've heard of James. I'm not as unschooled as you think I am, but that still doesn't answer the question.
I've always said,
does the male come into it at some level, somewhere along the line? Other than that, you continue in giving saying the woman is her choice or not, whichever way you go, it's still setting her up for the consequences of going to jail, or having to raise a child on her own with the financial aspect, or asking for aid, which puts it on the taxpayer to be financially raising a child that she and someone else made the decision to have, and to have sex, etc., etc.
That's the part of accountability that I be talking about, because there has to, at some point, people got to stop being reckless with their sexual organs and reproductive organs, because people are very reckless and careless.
But okay, so let me give you another scenario.
Mm-hmm.
Young man has a child, can't pay his child support. State puts him in jail X number of years. What sense does that make? When he comes out, he's going to be further behind in the child support than he was before he went to jail.
Normally, if you go to jail for child support, it is blatant and utterly like you are totally trying to not pay. And you've had various warnings and all of that. And so if you are not trying to pay, and when you go to jail, you can make money in jail and they will put it towards your damn child support.
$12 a month. $12 a month. I can
Hey,
tell you.
I
It might be
mean,
25 now.
listen, if you decide to have a child, most of the time, the only reason you go to jail, well, child support is different in
In
every
different
state.
states, yeah.
Yeah.
I used to work for child support at one point, and it would start right now. You can't even really do the things that you could do 5 or 6 years ago, as far as initiating the jail process and all of that. Now they have a way that is regulated, because I remember working at child support, people would call and be like, "Well, he needs to go to jail. He didn't pay. He missed one payment." Girl, shut up. He missed one damn payment. He ain't going to jail for one payment. But if you are 6 months behind, you might need to go to jail. And if you was not paying for those 6 months, one, your ass need a damn job. And if you had a job and you was ducking paying child support and had a job, then that is on you. So if you get further behind, that is on you. A mother, I just told my ex-husband this the other day. It doesn't matter what a mother does when she becomes a mother. She does not get the option to say, damn, I don't got no money today. Y'all just gonna starve. Like, she don't get to turn off being a mom. She still gotta provide. She still gotta get shelter. She still had to have food. She still gotta take care of the kids physically, mentally, spiritually. It is no break for motherhood. So when I think of Roe versus Wade, I think, listen, ladies, you need to be taking the hint, because being a single parent and mothering in general is not an easy task. And people are having these babies and putting them on their grandparents. They having these babies. They don't want to be responsible. They leaving them, and it's so crazy, because I heard people talk about it's going to be more suicide. It's going to be more this. But listen, if you're going to kill yourself because you don't know goddamn how to keep your legs closed, and that is a whole different issue. You need some help anyways. And listen, suicide prevention, call the number 1-800-suicide, I believe, and get help. But if you have a problem with not being able to get an abortion, and you ain't getting raped, and it ain't incest, and it ain't molestation, it ain't none of that, and you just out here hot in your thoughts with your streets out here, you this is for you. This is for you to say, do I really want to get pregnant? And there is a lot of states that are okay with people still having abortions, where you can travel there and go back home or do whatever you want to do. I'm sure they're going, if people can pay for BBLs and finance BBL procedures and travel all over the world to get their body redone, then they can find a way to get an abortion if they really just need an
And
abortion.
and it's my understanding, before someone is goes to jail for non-support, they're given alternatives, various
Mhm.
things to do. Even what is it? Doing this check or payments or things like that. Plus, you know, the decision to have sex is by two people. Two people. Therefore, if you don't have that other person accountable in some way, then it's really very, very one-sided in regards to the woman. And you're talking about a human life that, as Dr. Casey is saying, a woman just doesn't have the option, or she does, there are the things in line to say, I don't care, I'm like, you're not going to get fed today. Go up, visit your father in jail to see how he gets some money. But I mean, I think one of the reasons that it's still out there the way it is because the men don't want the men to be accountable in some manner, in some way, regarding pregnancies and paternal. Um, well, at some point, some men are, they want to be responsible and take care of children and things, but then there are the ones that don't, which gets, this contributes to what we're going through now. And as to adults making a decision to have or not having sex, if you keep having sex with unprotection, not protected, and no birth control over and over again, having multiple children, 5, 6, 7 children. You know what's going on, and you're trying to get out of that responsibility. And the woman, whether she decides she plays into decision at some point in contributing to allow you to get away with not being responsible, if she doesn't name you, or also agree that you should be accountable for that decision that both of you, that private personal decision that both of you make, and one of you gets the opportunity to get away with not being responsible or accountable.
Yeah, I've never had any problem with men being held responsible. Like I said, there's a lady that I think she's the first one that's been charged. She went across state lines, had an abortion, and she's been charged with manslaughter. Well, to me, the man should be as an accessory to manslaughter.
Yeah, he set her up.
Well, I don't know so much. She might have set him up. I mean, sometimes it goes that way just too. I mean, he ain't just set her up. Sometimes, it ain't just them words that come out of man's mouth. Sometimes that woman done had her eye on him for a long time.
If legally he's not held responsible, then he is in a way setting her up for not him taking the role of being responsible for birth control, whether it's a condom or a vasectomy or whatever.
So Ms. Sims, are you saying that women that have different children by different men are setting the man up? Or has each one of those men, taken her for a sucker, and each one of them has set her up separately?
It's more, I think the decision between them is more so about having the brief sexual encounter. It brings, the decisions you make to have sex at that time and moment. You can't get away from it, James, really.
No, but like I said, like things have changed. I remember, you could go in the projects, and if you in project A, you got a son over here, and another one over in project B, and maybe another one over on the north side. So I mean, things have changed since our sexuality period. I mean, we were ridiculous back at, well, some of us anyway.
What things have changed? What things have changed that you're talking about, James? Because people are still having sex without being accountable or responsible, and multiple births, and men are still using women just for sex and leaving them. What changes are you speaking about?
What did you see more of when you were back in the day, Miss Sims? Marlboro commercials or commercials for Trojans?
Back then, they ain't even had commercials like that.
Precisely, but we had commercials. We had commercials for cigarettes. We had commercials for Coke. We had, a whole lot of things that wasn't good for us. We had commercials for them, though, right? So what I'm saying is, today you can look on social media, you can look on different platforms, and you can find out information. Just like Dr. Casey with the vaccine, what you decide to accept is up to you, but the information is out there. There was a time when the information was not even out there. Like I said, hey, the most popular excuse in the 80s was, it just don't feel the same, baby.
It don't.
And it's still used
today. In 2020, and as recent as 2015, in my last experience, it still did not feel the same. And the new stuff that they use, and it's probably a whole lot different than they used to use, which causes females to have more allergic style reactions. And men can have reactions.
I got so many different kinds. I got beaded, I got tipped, I got, I mean, come on, I got extra.
Yeah, but it's a little bit different large, for men than it is for women, because with women, it's actually going in their body versus with a man, and it's just on their body. So it's a lot different as far as the reactions and things like that. But yeah, it's so much out here. It's so much out here that can mean so many things, because there's a lot of AIDS out here, there's a lot of STDs out here, it's
Yeah.
a lot of everything out here. But people don't care. So what makes people value their sex more? What makes people more accountable to themselves? But a lot of times it's because people don't love themselves enough. So a lot of times we hear people say that women shouldn't be so easy, but men are easy as hell too. Men
Oh,
will
come on.
give you
Yes,
some and so.
sorry. I'm telling you. Hey, you know,
But the
was it-
problem is that men don't value themselves. I have an episode. I don't know if it's out yet or if it's in these next couple of seasons that are coming. But that I tell, like, look, your sperm is valuable. You create a woman cannot have a child without your sperm. So there's a lot of men that are careless with their sperm. Um, I don't want to say Nick, but I think Nick is bordering some mental health issues, because why you get 4 people pregnant all the time at the same time. And I think that he should be cautious, because the same way that they did Wendy Williams, they can do to his ass, whether he realizes it or not. Because if you're acting recklessly, they can come and act like you are out of your mind and take control and possession of you and your things. So men are very reckless, very careless when you think about Future. Future just had babies by anybody. He sleep with a motherfucker and they pregnant. Bruh, value your sperm. You are king and queen creators. You make the babies. Your sperm first. You need to make sure it's healthy, so these kids won't quit having the scoliosis and shit, because your sperm is the base of their spine. So if they got something going on with their spine, it's your sperm. But that's another topic, I think.
James, I was thinking about what you mentioned about the proliferation and the openness of commercials nowadays versus back then, and I agree with you. Nowadays, the commercials are there, and even the at one point for males even to request a condom, you had to have a prescription. Nowadays, you can just walk in the drugstore and get them. And I think
I can go to the gas station. I ain't even got to go to the
and
drugstore.
I don't know if it's can you get do you still need a prescription for the morning after pill or whatever?
That you
But
do, yes, I believe.
okay, but even women getting birth control, it's not as restrictive as it used to be. It's more flexible, and I think different kind of birth controls, you can have some sort of injection, and versus how it used to be in the beginning, when a lot of people went for, especially when it first came out and people were taking it, and a lot of women were getting sick. And I've never had taken a birth control pill per se, because that was one of the fear of the my friends and people back then, and women and men back then, who were being responsible. So and so that the medication and the pill itself has supposedly has gotten better and different as time has gone on, and medical society has increased. And like I said, now you can get injections for a few months or and things like that. So here again, there's no reason for supposedly two adults making an adult decision about sex versus about having an abortion. Two different questions and topics and responsibilities that people are being held accountable to.
I see Brother Williams is in here. I'd let you you two women double team me long enough.
Listen, I told you I'm on your side. I believe that that thing going, I like Papa being a Rolling Stone. Sometimes you gotta go through some things, to come out of that. But Papa gotta stop rolling them stones and making them babies.
Yeah,
But
I heard it. She went off on preacher.
Brother Williams, how you doing this evening?
I'm blessed. Can't complain.
I know Humblebee. You said would be joining us. Wow, right there, she came right in on cue.
Mm-mm.
So Humblebee is here also. Good evening, Humblebee. How are you doing?
Good. How are you?
Okay. We were discussing the Roe v. Wade decision, and there were a couple things that we covered that I want Brother Robert and Humblebee to comment on before we get into our next discussion. And Clarence Thomas, Uncle Thomas, had a lot of things to say about his decision
Can I
on
ask you a
Roe.
question real quick before you keep going?
Go
Is
ahead.
that the same Clarence Thomas from I be stroking? That what
No,
you was doing?
no, no,
Stroking
boy.
wood. Oh,
See that.
see.
Where's Mr. Scott? Let me get you. Okay. where's, where's Mr. Scott when I need him? Well,
Yeah, when we need him.
okay. So, so Clarence says, the basis for this law, that since we're using this as the basis, maybe we should go back and use this also as a time to re-examine contraception and same-sex marriage. Uh, and Brother Robert, Ms. Sims brought up, why is there no responsibility for the male? So, which one of you two would like to field which question first?
I'll let you have it, humble.
Of course, I want to jump in on why aren't there responsibilities for the male? I've seen recently, a lot of people posting, that their husbands or boyfriends, in their form of support, going out to get a vasectomy. Where is their responsibility? And why would you if you're going to take away abortion? Why would you take away contraceptions as well?
Well, that's what Clarence Thomas is saying, that he wants to take away contraceptives, but he also would like to take away same-sex marriage.
And that's another thing. If you're not okay with same sex marriage, don't marry the same sex. Simple as that. I don't understand what I do in my life has to do with you. Not you personally, but the people who are, fighting to bring that back, is we're taking major steps backwards.
See, but the thing, what I was saying humbly is that really they control so much of our lives that we don't even really realize that they're controlling everything from who we should marry, who we can do, what we can do, what we can't do, from sex to marriage to shit. HOAs controlling if you can put a pool in your backyard. It's everything is really micromanaged more than we I don't know if we don't recognize it, don't see it, or we're just so caught up in everything else that we don't even pay attention to it.
I think that we're so used to having them micromanage that people aren't even paying attention. But if you actually really pay attention, I was just talking about it recently with the area that I live in and how they micromanage only certain people over here. Um, is it's all the way down to they're micromanaging how many grocery bags you can use, and now you got to pay for it in certain areas. So it's like people are just now starting to realize, because they did something so big, that we are being micromanaged, and people are starting to wake up and realize, all right, what can we do to stop this?
Sometimes
What?
it feels like the whole COVID pandemic and everything was around the micromanaging and the control aspect, just to see if they still had that pull. You know what I'm saying? Like, let's see if we can still do this real quick. So we're gonna do this, then we're gonna put a little, and then they kept throwing extras in it to kind of exercise that control and the panic aspect of what you see when something happens and everybody's like, oh my God, what is going on? And then they go out and they're splurging really because of panic more than anything else.
Yeah, they knew what they were doing with that. They know exactly what they were doing.
Well, I would like to say basically, I want to refer back to Peyton's manifesto. Back when he shot up that the story in his manifesto, he specifically said that abortion needs to be abolished for the protection and and rejuvenation of the white race, as well as you see that the certain Republicans that been pushing that was saying the same thing. I still say
It was
this
just
goes back to
repeated
that.
Friday. Was it Saturday at the Trump rally? It was just
Yeah, a win for the white race.
right. No,
Yep.
Excuse me. I meant the right.
Yeah.
The right.
But I feel like black people
Yeah,
should feel like
the
that to
right
some
race.
extent.
Yeah, the same difference to them. What's that now?
I think that black people should feel like that. They shouldn't feel like it's something being stripped. I feel like it strengthens the black race as well. But like I was talking about earlier, some of these things wasn't put in place to help us. It was really put in place to control and
Right.
micromanage our numbers in a population. So, but like me and Humbly said, they don't even realize the destruction that these things have caused. So when you look at it being overturned, it's like, well, you taking it. No, we're trying to give you back something that you don't realize that you was missing, but it's not received because we're so conditioned to think whatever they've been telling us to think that we don't even see that we're getting our rights back in ways that they can't take away from us.
Well, I feel like the aim behind it is more about those white folks that are in power and what they're trying to do to protect their numbers, and that's really what I see. Because kind of going back what you're saying, when I look at it, kind of like I looked at the crack epidemic. It was okay as long as in the black community. But soon as things start getting to a certain point, look, the damage has been done. Now it's starting to hit our folks. Now we need to do something about it. And so the intent was initially to target black people, but then when more white folks start taking advantage of the situation, it gets out of control. And so I really feel like that is one of those scenarios to where things took a turn, an unexpected turn, and so now they're reeling it back in order to address that.
Yeah, they got scared when they saw the statistics and saw that the majority of people getting abortions were white women.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a thing that's almost missed in the conversation because, like you said, Brother Robert, until it started affecting white neighborhoods and white people, there was no real need to address this. Now, all of a sudden, we find out that white people are becoming a minority. So we need a surplus, and I know we've talked about this, a surplus of white children in order for us to maintain our numbers. And now, last week, abortion is to protect white people, not, to necessarily control anything else, but to make sure that we once again have the numbers because, hey, we're becoming a minority. It was no, that was the scariest thing that white people have ever heard is that we are not the majority anymore.
Yeah.
Now,
As
only thing that we need to do is combine our total efforts. But that's a difference. Go. Who was that I interrupted?
it was me, and I agree with, and everyone's basically saying that it has the strongest motive and push is politics. Here again, all I've said before, politics contains three things: a strategy, power, and control. And right now, I think one of the reasons it's the first reason that is coming up right now is to whip people up politically and emotionally because it historically people know and politicians know that it's always been an emotional thing and people will get out and vote one way or the other. And then number two, birth control, even from the beginning, if you remember, has always been it started out towards the white population because when I first came to in the 1972 to Minneapolis, and even before then, the thing about the real kicker about being against abortion was because Catholic women, the Catholics were against having abortions and they're because of their religions or whatever their belief. And at one point, it seemed to be Catholic families were having the largest number of children per family. But with the abortion coming in and contraceptions, especially, then that changed. Women thought about it and weren't just leaving it up to the church to dictate and come into their beliefs and stuff. And they started also having abortions. And that's one way here again of the population of white children being born decreases through the years, and it has contributed to the lessening of the numbers, through the years. Now we're seeing the result of the lessening of births, especially on the white culture in particularly. And you're right, it strikes fear in the hearts of people who want to, the politicians and decision makers who want to remain in political control. Because if I fear and I believe that someone else is going to be bigger in numbers and supposedly take my control, while I'm in control, I'm going to do everything to shut you down, not to be able to shift control to another party. I'm going to say, I'm going to try to stop you from voting. I'm going to try to stop you from having less children. So here again, that plays into the political strategy of what's happening now out of fear and power and control. Because if I only talk about abortion, abortion at one level of having an abortion and women's decisions and stuff, then I'm able to divert the conversation away from men have a role in this too. Men have a responsibility in the decisions that are being made to have unprotected sex and the consequences of sex and children and things like that. So it's a control thing too there, keeping it on the woman and abortions. As long as I'm able to do that, then your mind isn't going to go towards, hey, there's somebody missing. A second party is missing in this conversation that is contributing to birth and not having birth, and that's the male. And the men don't want them to be brought in, that subject to be brought up, and for them to be held responsible and accountable. A lot of men don't. Not all men. A lot of men don't, especially ones that are in power, political power and control.
And James, I got to say that I agree with the three women on the panel simply because the bottom line is, and I'm gonna spin it off and say pretty much predominantly the white male, because when you look at the way the country is ran and just how things are just played with, period, in terms of politics, any group other than white male is considered a minority, even though that's not the majority. So from that standpoint, it's all about control. It's always been about control from them. And from that point of view, they basically want to be able to make sure that they're able to control any and everything else that's going on. So yeah, from that standpoint, women and white women, particularly in this case, have been affected, and they want to do what they can to put the control back in their hands. So from that standpoint, I believe the decisions is being made because the white male wants to be able to be the one to have that control factor placed back on it. And it goes into, like, you can scan and look at most sites that are perpetuating racism, and you always see on there that they're against abortion. You always see on there that they're against LGBT, and then they obviously against blacks, they're against Jews. All the list starts going on and on, and it lines right up with what laws and what things they're attempting to attack. And keep in mind, let's just look at the reality of the situation as it applies to that. It was on the books in terms of sodomy as being what illegal. Sodomy is a reflection on anal sex. Period. That's men. That is targeting men. Men targeting men from the standpoint of them feeling like it's about basically protecting their race, protecting their numbers, protecting being able to deal with reproduction. The more white men that are not engaged in reproduction, the more it affects their numbers. And so it's okay to be in the black community, but once it again it shifts over to where they're it's hitting their folks more than our numbers, especially percentage wise, then they got to put it into it. And I think all this is just geared toward that.
I had kind of touched on that very lightly, that subject of sodomy, with Dr. Casey earlier, and but as you say, Humblebee, you've been kind of quiet here. You want to?
I was taking it in, but I was sitting here thinking. So they think that they have it figured out because they're worried about their white women not having enough white babies, but they fail to realize that there's so many white women out here who fetishize black men. So our numbers are still going to keep growing, and you have these white men who are racist, but they also fetishize black women. So we're still going to keep growing. They're going to see it's going to backfire on them. So as soon as you're done fetishizing and you got this black woman pregnant, or this white woman just got pregnant by a black man, guess what? Now they have to have that child.
And it's as long as I can keep the conversation on the woman and abortion, whether she had the right to do have an abortion or not, then I don't have to talk about sex. Two adult people being responsible for decisions that they make sexually to have to go have unprotected sex or not, because both parties know that having sex is a consequence of having a child, can be a consequence of having a child. Here again, if before the two of you came on, Humbly and Robert, I mentioned that if a state wants to hold a woman responsible for she has an abortion, then holding her legally responsible for killing an infant or this and that, then that also says, well, wouldn't you hold the male accountable for being an accessory because he made that decision along with her to have sex? So why just her be accountable for the result of the acts of sex? Then if you go on the other side, if for women to have a choice, if a woman has a choice and makes a decision to have a child or not, the male is still included, because some men will be responsible. Some births will happen in marriage, and then some within marriage, and males are going to be accountable. But again, a lot of the births are happening out of marriage. So if a woman doesn't identify the man, which she's allowed to, or the man not to sign the birth certificate, because whoever signs the birth certificate, my understanding, whether they're the actual DNA birth father or someone else, they are financially responsible for taking care of
it's called a father of record.
Yeah, but they're financially responsible for that child's upbringing of that child financially, unless it goes to court and they can prove that someone else did it, and that's a whole nother thing. But if that woman decides and that male not to say that he's responsible or bring him into the picture, then that woman is making a decision alone to financially support one or more children for 18 years of their lives. And at some point, some women are not able to deal with that. So then she may come up with a decision to ask for some sort of public aid and stuff. And that brings the public into the taxpayer into holding, helping be responsible for financing those children or that child the rest of their life. Here again, the male, the person who helps father that child gets off scot-free. And sometimes if he is named, rather than be responsible, he'll for financially, some men have not held a job or etc. etc. So really, if you think about it, it's really unfair not to bring the male into the situation. And can you think of any other thing on this earth here in the United States or elsewhere where a woman gets to make the own decision without
Miss
including
Sims,
someone else?
Miss Sims, I've constantly told you a fair is a place where they judge livestock. But anyway, uh,
Well,
Minnesota and California, we are still a state where abortions are given. Dr. Casey, has this law changed anything in the state of Georgia?
Well, abortions here, again, I told you earlier, they are legal up to 20 weeks of gestation, which is crazy to me because that's like, anyways. So, they are legal here. Most of the only change that I think that really becomes effective is none. I think that it's pretty much legal if you have it because most doctors will give you a medical reason if you need a medical reason to do whatever it is you need to do. I don't think it's going to change much here. But there is something in place to where if it did change, it will protect medical and incest pregnancies. But again, Mr. Ward, I was telling them I don't believe that it takes away choice. I think that it reframes choice because you got a choice to still sleep around. You got a choice to spread your legs open to anybody you want to spread your legs open to, but you have to deal with the consequences of that choice. So I hope that it makes people a little bit more accountable and responsible than just going and having sex, just randomly with people and then using pregnancy or abortion as a birth control because a lot of people use abortion as the primary source of birth control um, and instead of just being more responsible.
well, I would even challenge one thing Humblebee said in regards to the white men liking black women, and on that note, because I really feel like, and I want to just take it back to when we were in bondage. When we were in bondage, remember, white men always slept with their slaves, but the slaves would never had a choice in the matter. Nor they couldn't. They had to deal with it. And the whole point was of that was is that they were attracted to black women from a sexual standpoint. The majority of them don't want to have a child by them. That child ends up being something as a result of the amount of sex that they constantly having outside of wedlock. And I think the same thing still holds true. And going back to something Sims was saying, I really think that the whole point, I'm sorry, Dr. Casey, the whole point is they are the racist ones that are in power are attempting to force more white men to be held accountable for their actions. And I think that their goal is to prevent white men from just erroneously sleeping around with the other race because they can't
Mhm.
now use contraceptives. I think the whole point is to reel them back in. Hey, enough is enough. Let's pull them back. You're gonna have to do what's right and white, so to speak. And I
Mhm.
think those gestures are thrown out there intentionally. We got to remember how subliminal warfare works. And so I think the whole position is to try to force a line in the sand, and cause more of them to be on that side and less people to go, anything that's going to be outside of their agenda. And so that's really what I see. I see them working a pattern of attempting to create stronger dominance. It's kind of like the last stand. Let's look at how they look at the Alamo. Alamo is taught from the perspective of white folks being the hero, in that aspect. So it's not about the reality of the situation or what's right. It's about the framework to promote and project a certain position. And this is kind of like toward that last stand. So if you don't do something about it now, it's kind of the same approach that they should be having toward climate change. It's getting to the point of no return. If you let it tip a little bit further more, there's no coming back from losing this race. And I think that's basically the position they're recognizing. They're looking at the statistics and they're saying, if we don't address this right now, then it's going to get to a point to where there's no turning back, and there's nothing we can do. And that's really what I feel like their position is. And other people, us as Africans, we're looking at it from a different point of view. And I really feel like this would just really be what I refer to as a modern day version of buck breaking in terms of how it applies to the black, and even going back to what Sims was saying about the holding the men accountable. I think in one of the things that may happen or is result of this is because we're dealing with a younger generation that is still emotionally unequipped to deal with the technology that's out there. So now when you throw something like this in the mix, and you're dealing with people that are typically immature anyway because of social media, because of not being able to deal with reality on reality terms, what do you think's going to happen when they don't have contraceptives available? I think you're going to end up with more pregnancies and more single parent mothers, more women on welfare, and I'm talking about the black community. And it's going to create more of a dynamic, which I think they want, to where you create a greater separation of the black families and draw a line in the sand and cause white folks to be more about themselves at that point. I just see this as like one of the last things that they're trying to do to fight that narrative, and this is just going to go right into the hands of where the Republicans want to take things.
Brother Williams, I had another question, but I want to kind of skip over this and go back to a subject that we talked about last week, and that was post-traumatic slave syndrome. We've heard, economists like Thomas Sowell and some of the other guys, Larry Elder, uh, Whitlock from ESPN, all kinds of different people tell us that, uh, you know, there's no such thing as racism, that, we're all here, we're on an equal footing, and we're all can advance by the sweat of our brow. So, uh, Brother Williams, my case to you is, are these gentlemen right that we're using these different types of syndrome as an excuse rather than a platform of call to action?
Well, let's look at it from the position of recognizing we're on a battlefield. If we recognize that we are at war, then yes, they're right. Why would I say they're right? Because the name of the game is to make the society operate as individuals, and the name of the game is to continue to push us further and further away from our cultural values and determine and self determination as Africans. So yes, they're right if you want to abandon anything that has to do with any semblance of black society. Now, if you want to just again jump into the rat race, jump in knee deep into capitalism, jump knee deep into fascism, jump knee deep into individuality, then they are right again up to a certain degree, because obviously, no matter how you look at the tier structure, the black is on the bottom, but we can be at the top bottom. So the whole point is to fuel the capitalistic machine. So the more people you have running that rat race, the better off that consumption engine is. And again, it's about the pursuit. Pursuit is what fuels consumption. It's not saying that you're going to get there, but that's what fuels consumption. It's all about getting people to spend money. And I think a lot of that goes into generating fear for the sake of consumerism as well. So that to me just really just plays right into the hand that they want everything to go into. So on the flip side of that, I think part of our problem as a people is that we don't recognize, and I say this a lot, that we are on at war. And from that standpoint, we think playing the victim card is like our claim to fame, and that makes us better in a sense because we are the ultimate victim. Once you've been in a certain position for so long, you want to hold on to that position, even if it's in the wrong position. And I think I even mentioned it last week. It's no different than black folks still want to eat chitlins in 2022. It's like how much how long you want to hold on to that quote unquote stuff that is no good for you for the sake of being able to say, this is my heritage, this is what I want to hold on to, this is what makes me me. And so a lot of us are stuck in victimization, but we don't recognize that that is where they want us to be. And so yeah, and to me, I would say that one of the shining princes of the situation would be Herschel Walker. And you can't tell me he don't make the perfect poster boy for their narrative and how they want us to think. And so it's just a trap, is all it is. And remember, trauma in itself, when we deal with generational trauma, it causes you to be stunt in your growth, stunt in your development, stunt in the way you process and critically think. So you take that, and then you take the fact that they want to push on you that we have equality, we have true freedom, we have true choice, we have the ability to do this and do that. And so people will buy into that and run that narrative and add to the economy. And that is the face that America wants to put on before the world court and in the world society. Anyway, it's not true, but that is a perception. And as long as we buy into that perception, whether it be through our holding on to victimization and feeling like celebrating Juneteenth and making it a holiday is us triumphing, you know, going out and buying your Walmart Juneteenth ice cream. You done overcame something. As long as we buy into that consumption again, I'm gonna go out and buy some Juneteenth ice cream. Really?
I
So
just
again, it's consumption.
I just want to say, Mr. Williams, I'm not African. My greatest grandmother that I could find was actually a Native American, and is from the lands
Mm-hmm.
of Virginia. So, and a lot of people don't realize that.
Right.
I think that that plays a big part in what we see now too, because people are becoming more aware of our national heritage to the United States. Well, not to the United States. That's the business. I'm talking about to the Americas. Um, and again, even when you think about the fear of white decline, it is because they realize that we are getting that big old thick Noah Webster dictionary, and understanding that we are the copper skinned Americans
Yeah.
that originated here. And the more that we realize that and see that, it makes them fear that one day we will rise up in understanding and take things back into our control. That's the real fear.
But
It's
that's
not
still
just
that's
numbers.
black. That's still black identity extremism. What you're saying, whether you talk about being black here and being before white folks, or you talk about being in Africa before white folks. The point is, if you're identifying pre pre European on anything,
Mhm.
it is a threat. Okay, so
Right,
it's
right.
still the same to me. All right, because you're talking about being here before them. How dare you say you had folks here before Christopher Columbus?
No,
That
remember
that
they
that
discovered.
they'll pass out.
Right, they discovered America. Remember, it was
Yeah,
until it was no such place until they all of a sudden the boat hit.
yeah,
Oh, it's America. Oh well.
yeah.
Ain't nobody ever been
They
here
just they
before.
just they did the same way they discovered Egypt, and they discovered algebra. They
Yeah.
discovered mathematics. All of these things that they discovered, and all we could do is just run around with our clothes off. You
Mm,
let them tell it.
Miss
right.
Sims, you've
Yes.
you've been a little quiet there.
Well, I was thinking about the topic that you all, the post traumatic race syndrome,
Post traumatic slave syndrome.
slave syndrome. And last week, I looked it up, and to see where the term came from, and I hadn't heard it put in those terms those words before, so I went and looked it up. And as I read it, it's really it really goes back when you experience post traumatic something. It's something that's repeated over and over, and it triggers something in you. And in regards to the slavery thing, all this time we have, as a race, we have not stopped being oppressed and reminded of the limitations that the majority race has on us, and our limitations in various ways. And if it's not overt, it's become covert in other different ways. So it's a real thing as I looked at it, and it's really in bottom line beginning terms, it's real, and it's really a repetitive of something like when you have things related to the war. It's something that happens, you come in contact with over and over again, and it triggers something. It happens over and over. And in regards to the slave, how we were treated as slaves and the things that came along with it, none of that has completely gone away. It's taken a different face and become gone kind of underground, or a new face, but it's still out there. So we're continue to experience it, and we live with it and in it. So it's real when you think of it and realize it, that that's what's going on and what's happening.
Humblebee, how does your generation look at this post-traumatic slave syndrome? Are we do we use that victim uh, complex too much?
I think that this generation honestly does. There's so many opportunities out there for you to go out and learn what your true history is. Everyone's just sticking with, all we know is we were slaves, and we know that this was taken away and we're oppressed. But there's so many resources out there, so many books. If you can just pick up a book, learn something, instead of playing the victim, saying that I don't have these opportunities. Educate yourself. There's resources out there. Buy black owned, so that way you're putting the money back into your own community and you're stopping the oppression. But people would rather get excited, like you guys were saying about Juneteenth becoming a national holiday, go buy a bottle of Hennessy and some stuff from Walmart that says Juneteenth on it, versus go into your community, have your own events, have your own things, buy from the people that are there, versus building yourselves up. No one wants to actually learn.
I would like
Let
to
me give
shout
a
out, if I can, real quick, the Black Bread Company. It is a black bread business, the first one ever in 100 years. If y'all want to invest, go and invest in that. If you want to really support and make something of your own, and put your money kind of where your mouth is. I know we all eat bread.
I wanted to recommend a book real quick, just on that note. Um, let's see if you can see that. It's called When the World Was Black. There's a part 1 and part 2 volume. This is a powerful book written by a brother named Supreme Understanding. And the reason why I bring that up is because thorough research was done to where he actually went in and showed how on different parts of the world how the original people were black. He even has a section in there where he talks about the Ita in the Philippines, and I had the opportunity to go to the Philippines and see that part of it and see how they're suppressed. The where you actually see the natives in the Philippines with dark skin and just looking as African as anybody, but yet nobody talks about them. In all different parts of the world, he goes into that and showed the history and how all lands have had black folks on it first and foremost, and we have to know our history from that standpoint. And it's kind of funny, because you referencing read a book, but it's like this. Some of the younger generations, everything has to come through video. Very little comes through by way of book. And so what we have to do is we have to make, hopefully I don't offend anybody saying this, but we have to make books sexy again. And we got to get people to want to be attracted to picking up a book and actually holding something in their hands and reading it. And so I think, that's a struggle within itself, but that's the direction we need to take. We need to make that to be an end thing again. It's for our people to read.
The really cool thing that I've noticed is that, well, actually, I might have that book that you got. I've been buying so
We
many books in the last couple of months. I follow a couple of what I would term pro-black pages, but it's really educational historical pages where it are people are literally reading the books out loud in video form so people can ingest and digest the information. And I have bought so many books. I be spending so much money on these books because when I see the pieces of information, yeah, I want to read the rest of the book, but I like to grab and hold on to the things that I know will help somebody else grow and understand. So I buy these books like that. Look, that American dictionary book is huge, and it costs like $40. I bought that book for 2 words: a Native American and American, where they say that the Europeans are dang gone aliens. They are not supposed to be here. That's the only
Yep.
reason I bought the book. I ain't read another word in that big old book. It's probably about 1,000, 2,000 pages. But I buy these books because I want to have them in my possession just in case for whatever reason some shit happened and the books ain't available no more. I got them. But a lot of times, a lot of black people think that only white people are writing these books. I had a
Right.
guy the other day say, "You just reading all them books, bro." Wrong. Try again. There are black people that are writing books that are knowledgeable, that go and do their research, and some
Yep.
books do build off of white research and knowledge, but everything should be a building point where you may see something, but you can go and cross reference. It's just like
Yeah.
I don't respect or like that people can go and tour where Jesus walked. Because after 2,000 years, hell yeah, I'm going to put something up and say Jesus was here and do a whole bunch of other stuff to get your money because it's still about getting that dollar and capitalism. So it's a lot of things that are being exploited. And it may be some energy there. Listen, it was energy in Iraq when I was in Iraq. So I'm not saying that the energy and the presence, but a lot of these things, some of these things were not in other countries. Some of these things were right here in the desert down there by Texas, Arizona, all of that. It's but people don't realize that some of the same terrains that are other places are still right here, and we just don't know enough to understand what's right here up under our own backyard and in our up under our own noses.
There's so much history here. A lot of people won't take the time to actually pay attention. I'm not gonna lie, I was one of those people that held on to being a victim, growing up with, knowing what my family name means here in San Diego, until I actually took the time to sit down to one of our elders and go through our family history and find out that we had a whole farming school in Texas. And finding out my family owns land and I have family members that are successful. I'm just looking at the ones that I grew up with here in San Diego, and I'm like, well, I'm not going to be anything because this is what I came from, until I realized I need to sit down, do my work, find out where the truth is, instead of holding on to the ones who are here, holding on to the oppression. And if it wasn't for me doing that, starting to pick up books and also joining the Black Panther Party with all the political education stuff that we have, I would still be playing victim right now.
I think it was very interesting when Humbly was speaking about how the younger generation is handling the racial things that are going on, and it kind of reminded me, made me think that the different generations handle the syndrome, PTSD, slavery syndrome.
Post traumatic slave syndrome. PTSD is a whole different thing.
Okay, however you're saying, and I'll have to learn it. But it was interesting how she said that the younger, and I hadn't thought of that because I'm not of the younger generation, I guess. how they're dealing with it and overusing things and uses as an excuse. And it reminded me of that one of the terms that struck me is this term of dismantling racism. I don't think dismantling racism will ever happen because it's been going on for years and years and years. I would rather say, and I use the term to confront racism, because when you confront something, you turn around, you actually, I think of a military term, you actually face it and deal with it. I don't know how you would go about dismantling something in a way that needs to be as it is related to race and racism. But if you can confront it and deal with it on all levels, that it needs to be dealt with.
So, Miss Sims, what did Malcolm do? What did Martin Luther King do? What did some of the early Black Panthers, Huey Newton? What did they do if they didn't confront it?
That's what I'm saying. Nowadays, people use the term.
We've been confronted since me and you were in high school.
Right, but nowadays you don't hear the term confront racism. You will hear, and there are lots of workshops going on and listening and going and discussing dismantling racism. The term dismantling, you never hear. I never hear nowadays.
Sometimes it is better to not hear those things because that's what draws the most attention.
I don't see what you mean.
Well, when where are those leaders that confronted racism that you're referring to? Where are they now?
Is that what you meant, Dr. Casey? I'm seriously.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay.
Let me say, when you on the battlefield, there are all types of people on the battlefield. You do not expose, your generals must not expose their battle plans to the enemy.
Yeah.
We cannot expose every aspect of our hand to the enemy on the battlefield and expect to be able to be victorious. So that's why I like to refer back to the battlefield. You must have your spies. You must have must have your secrecy. You must have all of your tools for disposal. So that's in essence what they're saying.
Well, one of the things that I learned in the military, especially after 9/11, is when you're in the battlefield, you don't salute, you don't show any special extra attention or do any other thing that you would normally do in a safe and non-combative zone, because if the enemy is watching, you're giving your enemy the plays, basically. Because if you saluting the commander and somebody is seeing you salute the commander, oh, you just identify. It's almost like if you've ever seen American Gangster, the movie with Denzel Washington, I believe that's the name. So if you've seen that, if you notice, he was cool until his ass wanted to put on that goddamn trench coat and go to the boxing thing, and then now he's a spectacle, and now everybody's got his attention. He's got everybody's attention because he needed to be seen. So sometimes being seen is like the worst thing ever, especially if you have a real movement, because then you're able to be targeted.
Yeah, he didn't need to be seen. His wife needed for him to be seen.
But he went along with it, so shit, his ass was goddamn blacking on his Mac. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. What's that?
He wanted some when he got home from the fight too. Come on now, let's be serious now.
I was telling Dr. Casey to get the art of war.
Yeah, I've read some of those books like several times because it's educational into what they're thinking.
I agree with what Robert's saying in regards when you on a battlefield and you realize that you're on a battlefield in many various ways, and there are various battles in various areas, then you do things to not give yourself away of what you can do. Like when something comes up and people socially nowadays, and people go out and protest in the street, and I say, look, this is a battle. You don't send all your troops out in the streets. You send some of them out in the streets, and then you send some of them to the policymakers. You send some of them that are make to where the decisions are being made. You got to think political. You have to think of how you're going to use your troops rather than just in one aspect, and that's out in the streets, and protest and stuff. That's useful, and that's one of the things that's needed. But you don't send everybody in that direction. Then once the protest is over, everybody goes home, and that's it. That's not continuing the battle. To me, that's just showing up for something.
I wholeheartedly agree with what you're saying there. That's just showing up, and you do have to wage battles on different fronts. I do agree with that strategy. Miss Sims, why don't you start tonight? Give us your final thoughts. Always good having you into the show. We'll go Miss Sims, Humblebee, Dr. Casey, and Dr. Robert.
I'm not a
Excuse
doctor,
me.
but
I like that. I like that. I like that.
Yeah,
Dr.
yeah.
Moore.
We'll let you take us home.
Number one, James, I don't want you to misunderstand me when I said just being out in the streets protesting. It's just not showing up. It's if I didn't say it and if you didn't hear, you need people out in the street. That's part of your battle. Those part of your warriors. But after the protest is over per se that day, and you just go home and don't continue, whatever, then it's what those people have done out in the street, and some of them are are willing to give their lives for something. Then you need to carry the battle. You need to carry the battle to win the war. Okay, the names for tonight. One of the things that that's coming up, especially here in Minneapolis, this election that's coming up, a lot of things are very important. One of the things that's missing, though, is people not paying attention to a lot of the decision makers, like the judges and people who are running for county attorneys and things like that. These are the people that usually voters don't think about in regards to that can make difference politically and legally. And one of the things that's I think is missing here, just in talking politics, is explaining to going back to the first line and explaining what the structure of elections are and how the various entities of how they interact with each other, like the legislature, the judicial branch, and the Supreme Court, and how important they are and how they interconnect, and how they, whether people realize it or not, how much they play into your everyday lives. And I don't see politicians, and especially going the route of trying to teach people or remind them of how important politics and the structure is in regarding voting. And the vote is what this country is kind of built on in regards to who's going to stay in power and control everybody else. And I wish people would start going back and reminding people, and sometimes it's teaching people about those, how that is structured and how they're interrelated and work as a team. And I think that that's missing. But I think if you make people more aware of that, and it could get them to maybe start thinking differently and see that how important your local elections are. Sometimes they're even more important than your national election in terms of you individually and what's going on in your community. And I hope more of that happens. The teaching, going back and teaching what voting is and how it's all interrelated. The end.
Thank you so much, Miss Sims. Humblebee.
Um, so I definitely, especially after talking, I already knew that I live in a generation where everyone sits and they dwell on the post-traumatic slave syndrome. They would rather sit there on social media and watch people argue back and forth with the racist stuff that's going on versus actually going out and learning what you can do to help. Um, that's why I'm doing what I do now. I want to gain the knowledge. I want to be able to pass on the knowledge. Um, so I think it's time for me to continue to do what I do to show my generation that there are options out there and there's no reason to sit there and play victim and let oppression get the best of you, and you can put your money back into your communities. Just like Dr. Casey said, there's options out there for you to go invest, which I'm definitely looking into that now. Now that you mentioned it, that was all.
Dr. Casey, you want to give another plug to what was it, Black Bread?
Yes, it's the Black Bread Company. Um, if you look up the Black Bread Company, you will find it. It's the only one. It the investment starts at up under $300. It's almost like how fan base was. If you invested in fan base, I have been doing a lot of small investments because a small investment is better than no investment. So I recommend finding companies that you can invest in. Now I am not a financial advisor. I got a lot of coaching skills, but finances is not the one I'm trying to give you right now. However, I strongly suggest that if you do invest, you invest an amount that you're comfortable with, not seeing a return for at least a year or more. So if you got some extra $200 or $300, instead of going and buying a bottle or a section or some shoes or some clothes, invest in your legacy, invest in generational wealth, invest in the Black community, and really, honestly, be more accountable for your choices. Everybody has a choice. Now, you might not be able to choose the consequences, but the actions that you choose will have the consequences. So you're choosing the consequences. Be more willing to be accountable in every aspect, and then focus on growth. Read books, learn more. Whatever you are doing in your life, learning and reading more books will help advance every single area. Go to Speaking Freedom TV. Always go pick up my book. It's my time. Learn the journey of me and be blessed.
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Casey. Look forward to talking to you next week. Brother Williams, Professor of the Streets, take us home. Then,
All right. Well, basically, I do want to give a small plug on a Panther 48 channel on YouTube. Last week, we gave a class and it posted today on psychological conditioning of the people. And one of the things I want the listening audience to be aware of, especially as it applies to the last thing we talked about with post-traumatic slave syndrome, there's three elements that we have to be aware of that feed into that. And one of them will be referred to as functional disorder. And functional disorder gets into the fact that we develop a lifestyle of coping as opposed of solution-based living. And basically, when you think about that, what coping is us being taught to run the obstacle race, the obstacle course, and that we get rewarded for how fast we can jump over, around, or go through or go under an obstacle, as opposed to recognizing the fact that if we're living a solution-based lifestyle, you're supposed to remove that obstacle so that the next person doesn't have to be fast at coping, which is going above, around, over, or through the obstacle. So coping basically teaches you that in order to address racism, you learn to cope with racism. You learn to be able to maneuver and not affect you, as opposed to dealing with the aspect of removal. And kind of going back into something I do want to clarify that Dr. Sims spoke on is in dealing with the confrontation of racism is a step in the process. The idea is that you confront something first, you bring it to light, you bring it out of the darkness, you expose it for what it is, and then you build a team of people that will work toward dismantling it. And once it's dismantled, then you create a defense system that will prevent it from reoccurring. So there's aspects of that. Within the Panther Party, we talk about the 3Ds as it applies to our ability to learn those, and that's define something. So we must define who we are, we must define our element, and then being able to develop that. And then that's developing the ability to overcome a situation as opposed to just coping with it, and then being able to defend that legacy, which is how you make sure the next generation does not have to relearn or rediscover, as we was talking earlier, the same things and then find themselves in the same condition. So the functional disorder again addresses the fact that we should develop solutions as opposed to being conditioned to deal with coping, because coping are the biggest elements that control our destiny as black folks. The other one of the three is the consumption identity. Consumption identity goes into the fact that basically we are taught to consume, and we're taught to think with our emotions, and our emotions causes us to what go out and spend. When we're upset, we want to go spend money. When we're happy, we want to go spend money. When we want to treat somebody, we go spend money. Everything has to do with facing or dealing with or addressing things external, versus going with inside yourself and developing and figuring out, your place in society, figuring out who you are, recognizing that the blame and accountability rest upon your shoulders. So the consumption identity feeds into that. The third one has to do with what we refer to as codependency. And so as a people, we must be able to hold ourselves accountable. We must define who we are. And by doing so, we recognize that we have been codependent too long upon a system which feeds into victimization. So we have to address that codependency and remove that from our vocabulary, remove that from our way of life, and recognize that we are, as a people, can be and must be self-determined. It even goes into what Dr. Casey talked about by recognizing her native roots. Knowing that your native roots are there means that, guess what? At some point in time, you were not a slave. At some point in time, your culture was intact. At some point in time, you knew how to navigate and survive on this land. So as a people, we have been stripped of our culture, stripped of our way of life, stripped of our heritage, stripped of our power, and stripped of our ability to recognize that we can do without them. So again, we have to know that we have to move away from being codependent, and that basically means be self-determined as a people.
Well, thank everyone that participated tonight. Thank everyone
One
that
second.
listened. Go ahead, Dr.
So,
Casey.
Spiritual Human Behavior, my digital audiobook, it actually helps people to discover and uncover the reasons behind their defense mechanisms, what plays a part into who they are, and how that affects their purpose, their personality, and everything else. Is why it's called Spiritual Human Behavior, because there's a spiritual aspect to all human behavior that I really want to help people to understand.
Well, as I said,
Right.
thank you so much. And Dr. Casey, make sure, what was that? Give up Speaking Freedom TV.
Speaking of Freedom TV, edu-freedom.org as well.
All right. Have a
I'm gonna
good
let
night.
you get away, James. I'm gonna let you get away with closing words tonight, but this for only this one time, I'm gonna let you get away with it.
Well, my closing words is that I agree with you that men should be held responsible for uh, their side of what happens to a woman when she has an abortion. I still believe, as I said, that there are differences between being fathers and being dads, and I think those are things that we have to work on in our community, as well as making sure, as Brother Williams put it, that we are not codependents and that we establish once again our self-determination. But referring back to you, Ms. Sims,
Great
uh,
closing words. Great closing
the,
words,
the,
James.
There are going to be times when we need people in the streets, though, Miss Sams.
That's right. That's what I'm saying. They're using the front. They're using the first ones you see as that's out there. Bring attention to it.
Hey, if you see something, say something.
I agree.
Have a good night, everyone.
Good night.
I'll talk
Peace
to you
and love
next
to the
Monday.
next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.